this evening. Oh, I'm going to pass it over to Johnny to read the governor's executive order for our virtual meeting this evening.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Welcome, Balboa Park Committee members, members of the public, and city staff to the Balboa Park Committee meeting. I am Balboa Park District Manager Johnny Cho, and I would like to share meeting procedures with you before we begin the meeting. The Balboa Park Committee will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Executive Order 2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. In the interest of public health and safety, board members will participate in the meeting by Zoom webinar. As such, and in accordance with the executive order, no members of the public will attend the meeting, but instead join the meeting proceedings via the link listed on the agenda and website. In lieu of in-person attendance, members of the public may submit their comment via a public comment web form or join the live meeting webinar. The instructions for joining the meetings were provided in advance on the website and the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the board in writing must submit the web form prior to the meeting. For those wishing to speak during the live meeting webinar, when the item of which you wish to speak is called, press *9 on your keypad or press the raise hand icon on your computer. When prompted, please state your name for the record and provide your public comment. You will have time allotted by the chair to provide your comment. Once your time has ended, your microphone will be muted. Pursuant to open meeting laws, no discussions or action other than a referral shall be taken by the board or anything brought forth under non-agenda public comment. I will now turn the meeting over to Balboa Park Committee Chairperson Molly Chase.
Thanks, Johnny. We're going to take a quick roll call to confirm attendance. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and say present. Howard Blackson.
Present.
Dang Nguyen. Molly Chase is present. Allison Soares.
Present.
Briar Marsh.
Present.
Victoria Cran.
Present.
William Aaron.
Present.
Micah Parson.
Present.
Makeda Cheatham. Sarah Daw.
Present.
Chris Eddy.
Present.
Thank you for your attendance has been noted. Again, as a reminder to comply with the Brown Act, please verbalize all motions and second by the committee member. Approval of minutes. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes of January 5th, 2023. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
And I
I'll
will
second.
That's the square off on seconding. I think Sarah got to it a little bit faster. So motion by Howard, second by Brer. If everyone can, Victor, call the roll.
Molly Chase,
Yes.
Katherine Johnston, Howard Blackson,
Yes.
Dang Nguyen, Allison Soares,
Dane.
Briar Marsh,
Yes.
Victoria Karan,
Abstain.
William Aaron Jr.,
yes.
Micah Parson,
Yes.
Makeda Cheatham, Sarah Daw,
Yes.
Chris Eddy.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have any requests for continuances or any requests to move any of the items to the consent agenda this evening? If not, we'll move on to non-agenda public comment and committee member comment. Seeing none, we'll ask Johnny to read any web forms and then open it up for non-agenda public comment. And then I know, Howard, we do have, I believe, your slide.
Is this the committee member comment moment?
No, we're going to do non-agenda public comment, then we'll move into committee member comment.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have one web form. It's from Judith Swink. Her comment is, why is the sidewalk vending ordinance adopted last year not being enforced in the historic district of Balboa Park, Central Mesa, including the Prado and the Pan American Plaza? The ordinance specifically states that vending is not allowed in that part of Balboa Park at any time. That is all I have. I have Danielle Lehman for non-agenda.
Thank you, Johnny. Good evening. I just wanted to give three very short announcements from the International Cottages tonight. We did have a very productive safety and security meeting last Thursday morning. We met several of the newer rangers and a lot of police officers were there. But tonight, I would just like to focus on three items. One is House of Ukraine will be having a concert at the Organ Pavilion on the last Friday of this month, the 24th at 6 p.m. It's called A Year of Resilience. Secondly, House of Turkey is going to be taking donations this weekend and subsequent weekends for the earthquake victims. And lastly, on the 19th of February, House of USA will be sponsoring an African American Heritage Celebration at 2 p.m. Sunday, February 19th. Thank you.
Do you have any
Okay, that's
additional?
all. I do not have any other hands raised for public.
Perfect. With that, we'll move to committee member comments. I think Howard was first on the.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to ask the members if they're interested in the value of bus transit lines in Balboa Park. There was a very good report done by Circulate San Diego that had some very good references. So I just put a PDF, a short PDF of the highlights of the value of bus lines through Balboa Park in the chat. So thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, Howard. Any other committee member comments? Looks like Mike and Brer.
Yeah, Molly and Johnny just had a question. I understand that we're scheduled to meet in person for the next committee meeting. One, is that correct? And two, is that mandated, or does the committee have any discretion to continue to meet virtually if it so chooses?
I will ask Christina to address that question.
Yes, hi, I can go ahead and take that. Good question. Thank you so much. We are not, this is a mandate from the state. So unfortunately, we're not able to provide any sort of hybrid option for committee members, and everyone needs to be present and in person. There are very few exemptions, of course, for individuals that can't from the committee that are not able to attend. But again, those are limited. And from everything I've read, there's probably like 2 opportunities per council member in a calendar year. So otherwise, everyone should expect to be in person together in Balboa Park next month.
Thanks, Christina.
Brer, Victoria, and then Chris.
Everyone. So I thought that what I understood was that if you, for some reason, had to attend remotely, say Zoom, that you had to publish where you were Zooming from and make it available for the public to attend at that location. So if you're Micah, for instance, if you're in your home study, you would have to announce the address of your home, and people would they would have the right to attend the meeting at your home with you. I think that's the case, if I understood that correctly.
You are understanding that that is correct. That is part of the Brown Act law. However, that does not give a committee member the discretion to exercise that opportunity more than twice a year, is my understanding. So that it's not something that can be done every month. It's something that needs to be approved by the chair in advance as well. So I generally think that the posture, of course, needs to be in person. That also being said, the good news is that our city attorney's office, our advisory attorney, Nicole Padone, will be joining us next month to provide a annual training for all of us on the Brown Act. So please come ready with all of your questions for her, and she will be prepared to answer them in greater
Thank
detail.
you.
Claire and Victoria.
Hi there, everyone. I just had a couple questions, but first I'd like to make a comment on the lack of presentation materials tonight. It seems that we're getting presentation materials very late or not at all before meetings. And I'd like to ask that, things be provided in advance. It's difficult to form and provide good, clear input on the fly while also trying to listen to public comments. So it would be greatly appreciated if when presentations are coming forward that they could be given to us with enough time to at least review them. Sometimes reviewing these items requires site visits. So thanks for that. I had a couple other questions. I've been digging back a little bit. One is regarding the prioritization RFP for the framework for the future. I noticed back in July 2021, there was a target date for this to be completed this spring, 2023. I was wondering if there's any plans for this to get started or what the current status of that is.
Yes.
Do you want to answer now or shall I read the other two questions first?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that one now. We
Okay.
are reaching the point at which we can provide a public update on it. However, tonight I do not want to go ahead and do that for the purpose of not wanting to compromise the procurement process, given how long it's taken us to reach this point. However, I can say that the evaluation committee is reaching its conclusion, and as soon as I am given approval from the purchasing and contracting department to provide that update to all of you, you will receive an update on it.
Thanks for that. And then the other two questions I had, I was hoping to see the design review item back on the agenda. If there's an update on the progress of that. And then also there was a bylaws update process that was underway prior to me being on the committee. And I'd like to see if there's an opportunity to get that restarted.
Yes, thank you for those questions, Brer. On design review, we are continuing to work on that internally with several stakeholders on a proposal that perhaps could work both for the department and for community advocates like yourself. That said, we are not prepared to bring anything forward at this time. We've had several conversations here at this body, and as soon as we're ready to proceed with an additional proposal, we will bring it back. But conversations continue at this point. As it relates to bylaws, we would likely bring, you are correct that a bylaws conversation was had roughly 3 years ago. That being said, we likely would not bring back a bylaws conversation until we have clarity on what we would be doing with design review.
Thanks, Christina. Victoria?
Hi, I would like to echo Brer's comments about getting the materials ahead of time. But I also wanted to thank Johnny and any partners who made possible the attendance of board members at the December night's tree lighting and the behind the scenes tour of the renovations of the botanical garden. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Victoria. Seeing no additional committee member comments, we will go to the chair's report. My only brief report is that Catherine Johnston did have to resign from the Balboa Park Committee as she took a wonderful opportunity supporting the office of council member Kent Lee. And so she is now a city employee that is not going to be serving on the committee. So I believe the mayor's office is working on additional new appointments to the board, but the hope had been she could serve one last meeting, but she started earlier than expected. So I know we will all miss her. She served both Balboa Park Committee and Park and Rec for a very long time. So I want to thank Catherine for everything she's done for the park. And I know that we have a really wonderful advocate down at City Hall for all of us around parks. And so I'm really excited for the opportunity that she took. With that, I will move over and just say that because we have two items, even though one is an information item on the restrooms this evening, we're going to actually take that item first and respect of some staff time constraints. And then we are going to move the nonprofit partner updates again to email update. And then I will ask any city staff reports beginning with Cody. I'm not sure if she's here and can move over from, if Johnny can move her over, and then as well as Christina on behalf of Park and Rec staff, if there are any updates this evening. Thanks. Oh, sorry, I see Emily Bonner is here and Cody reminded us that Emily will be attending. So Emily, welcome and thank you for being here.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. There is not too much to report from our office except for everything that you saw in the news the last couple days. Councilmember Whitburn is working on a two-pronged approach to homelessness. First thing that he wants to set up is a safe sleep site, which is a place where people who are homeless can pitch tents, usually a parking lot, screened off for privacy. In that safe sleep site, there will be services, there will be bathrooms, there'll be everything that's needed to help kind of move people along from the sidewalk to housing. It's not going to be a permanent solution. It's going to be a stepping stone. And then the second part of the council members' initiative is an ordinance on where people can camp in public space and where they cannot. I am glad to come back next month when there is going to be more information to offer. Currently, we are looking at a full unveiling of the plan in early March.
Thanks so much, Emily. Do we have any questions for Emily from the committee members on those two updates? Howard?
Is there anything we can do to help?
I will definitely be letting everybody know. We're most likely going to need people for press conferences to stand behind the podium with the council member and people to call in to committee and council meetings in support.
Noted. Thank you.
And Emily, if I may, Chair, just add just very quickly that we welcome if you'd like to take this opportunity here at this committee level to provide a public presentation, we're open to that as well.
That would be great.
Victoria?
Hi, Emily. I don't know if you can speak to this specific question or not, but I'm wondering, are there talks of having the city yard in Golden Hill used again? I toured that with Chris Ward back, when it was being used, and I thought it turned out it was a pretty good site.
I can't speak to what site is going to be selected. That is up to a lot of different factors. The council member has identified several. That's all I can speak to.
Thank you.
Any additional committee member comments? With that, I'll move on to Christina.
Yes, hi, thank you, Chair. Just a few very brief updates. I'll be providing something in writing via email tomorrow to the committee as well as to stakeholders. Many of you know that Park Boulevard, the repaving for that started this week, so we're very excited to have that project underway. It will, of course, at the result of it, include not only the repave, but transit improvements to the separated bikeway from Morley Field to President's Way through Balboa Park. The work is being performed during the day, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4. If you have any questions about this work, please let me know. Additional details, again, will be provided by email tomorrow. As it relates to grounds maintenance projects, our team has been very busy in the park. We have seasonal plantings that have gone in at the Alcazar Garden, as well as the Plaza de Panama Fountain area. They look beautiful, so come on down to the park and take a look. As a result of the windstorm that happened recently in Balboa Park, our grounds maintenance team has also been working hard throughout the park doing tree assessments as well, working with our forestry division as well as our arborists to evaluate trees that are in need of removal, as well as those that need maintenance for to prevent future issues or collapse. So if you have any concerns about trees in certain areas of Balboa Park, please report those to the Get It Done app. And I'm also happy to take any inquiries or questions or reports about trees by email as well. The street vendor ordinance, starting this week, the city started fully enforcing the street vendor ordinance in the beach areas. That obviously doesn't impact Balboa Park so much. However, I will be providing additional details about what that enforcement posture looks like, and I'm happy to take any additional questions that you may have on that front. Civic Dance, the Park and Recreation Department, Civic Dance Arts has brought back its critically acclaimed dance show, and it's called Collage 2023. It's being performed at the Casa del Prado, February 10th and 11th, February 17th through the 19th. So if you're interested in attending that, we very much encourage your participation. And that is it for me. I'll hand it back to you, Molly.
Thanks, Christina. As I indicated, we don't have any items on the consent agenda this evening. We're going to take our information item first, which is item 501, and Charlie Daniels is here to give us an update on the Balboa Park restroom restoration. Charlie?
Well, thank you, Chairperson Chase, and good evening, members of the Balboa Park Committee. I am here to give you an update on the status of the restrooms, various restroom projects throughout the park. So I am going to go to share screen right now. Okay, this is where the technology goes bad. Okay, here we go. So what you're seeing is an overall view of the of Balboa Park. We have 6 different restroom projects going on through various means. The first one is a Spanish Village. You'll see that on the star there. It's a small restroom that is situated in the original 1935 buildings from for Spanish Village. Another proposed new restroom is located at Village Place, where the road turns from an east-west to a southbound. It's essentially near the site of the Village Grill, what used to be the Village Grill. We've got 2 different restroom projects in the Casa del Prado. One is in the building itself, and the other is the renovation of the restrooms in the theater building. I have an update for you on the Oregon Pavilion restroom site, as well as the Palisades site. And then last but not least is restrooms over at Morley Field. So as far as Spanish Village, it's a very small restroom and it's existing. We have a plan to essentially remodel the building. It cannot be brought up to full ADA compliance due to the historic pavers out in the plaza. It just makes an accessible path of travel impossible to accomplish. So we have another plan to do a restroom nearby that would be fully accessible. The women's restroom, which is located directly across the corridor from this men's restroom, was previously remodeled by Facility Services several years ago. And the scope of work would essentially be just to be updating this restroom, new fixtures, new partitions, rearranging the sinks, providing an accessible stall in here. Even though the path of travel to it is not accessible, we want to make it as accessible as possible. So as I had noted, all of this work can be done by Facility Services. Next proposal is for a new restroom located at Village Place. The blue building that you see on the left is the existing Village Grill building that is essentially scheduled for redevelopment. The plans are still a ways off. I can't really speak to the current status because we don't really have a good grip on when it'll be implemented. But if you see the orange rectangle on the top, the intent is to put in a smaller gender neutral, actually kind of medium-sized gender neutral facility at this site. It's fairly central to the North Prado area. It would also serve the Village Grill as well as Spanish Village and the other park sites in that vicinity. The next is in the Casa del Prado. As I noted, there are restrooms both in the Casa del Prado building itself, where there are different institutions as well as meeting rooms. And then there are restrooms in the Casa del Prado theater. Both of those are going to be addressed under a current CIP. That project is currently in pre-design and feasibility study. So it will be a few years before we get into the construction on those. The Oregon Pavilion restroom, direction from management has been to not perform the major renovations we had previously proposed to the committee, but to simply do a modernization of the existing facility so it would stay gender neutral. I mean, I'm sorry, it would stay as a men's restroom and a women's restroom. We'd be looking at doing new finishes, new fixtures, new partitions, new flooring, and whatever is recommended to address ventilation and ADA compliance. So as noted, this restroom will stay in its current configuration, just get a major remodel. The Palisades restroom, what we're proposing to do on this facility is essentially implement the Central Mesa Precise Plan graphic for this area, but do a little bit of a reversal. If you look at the graphic, it shows the existing restroom building being remodeled, then it shows a new South Visitor Center. So the intent is to build new restrooms instead of a new visitor center that will provide gender neutral restrooms, be fully ADA compliant, and then renovate the current restroom building to be more of a visitor center. So this project is going to be transferred to engineering and capital projects for implementation because this is going to be a bit larger scope of work. It would include installing the little plaza area that's out in front of it. And I'll go to the next plan that actually shows you an enlargement of that. So the blue building is the existing restroom that would get remodeled. Orange is the new building that would be designed and constructed as gender neutral restroom facilities. And then there's a plaza space out in front. And last but not least is the Morley Field restroom. This is a very old restroom that is actually quite small. There are only 2 fixtures in each side. This is too small to meet the demand of the site. The site hosts quite a few baseball games, soccer games, as well as cross-country runs. So it really needs to be much larger. So the plan is to demolish this building and redevelop the site with new fully accessible gender neutral restrooms. And this would be coming to the committee as a workshop in the future. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. That's just a quick update on where we're at with all of these restrooms.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Johnny, do we have any public comment on the item before we move over to committee member comment?
Give me 1 second. Charlie, can you stop sharing? Thank you. Yes, we have Danielle Lehman.
Good evening, Charlie. I just had a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, on the Palisades one, could you tell us how many spaces would be available in the new gender neutral that's planned to be built? Is it like 1 to 6? How big is it going to be, please?
I can't really tell you that right now. It's probably going to be in that moderate sized range because it serves a pretty good sized area of the park. But I think we'd be looking for committee response and input when we do get to that design phase. As I'd noted, this is going to be essentially packaged up and sent down to engineering and capital projects to do that kind of a study about how many restrooms are needed in this area and what size that would end up being and what the design would be.
Could you say it's approximately the same size as what Village Place, the new building, is going to be, or do you think it's possible could be a little larger?
I think it's highly likely it would be a little larger.
Okay, thank you very much.
We've got all the plaza space down there that we're trying to serve, so I'm anticipating it being larger.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Any additional public comment on the item, Johnny, or otherwise we'll move to,
Actually, Renee Smith.
perfect. I was gonna be very upset if Renee Smith was not commenting on this item, to be perfectly honest. So Renee, thank you for not breaking my heart this evening as we talk about Balboa Park restrooms. Renee,
Oh.
and it looks like we'll go to Cody as a as a public comment, and then committee member comment, Howard and Micah.
Great, thank you so very much. Really appreciate this. Unfortunately, Mary Coakley Monk could not be here to comment, but I did want to say thank you, Charlie, for working with us. For those of you who don't know, as part of the background, Charlie helped referee what essentially was a religious war over the redesign of the Oregon Pavilion restroom. I was unable to adjudicate between the Catholics and the Protestants. And, you know, to see this outcome, that take what we have here, improve it, concentrate on all of the other additions that we have, I think is just an absolute masterstroke. So thank you so much for that, Charlie. And of course, Christina, and the addition of now our 24th restroom in Balboa Park, public restroom with the Village Cafe Area 1. That is also a delight, and of course we all understand the $8 million or the $6 million that came from the state. Thank you to them for making this happen. It's much appreciated, and no other comments other than thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Renee.
Mary Monk next.
Oh, I was wrong.
Hi. As Renee said, we spent many hours trying to offer some plans, and Charlie was incredible in his efforts to produce something that was safe and fully accessible and easy to maintain. I'm really happy to see that the majority of the restrooms are gender neutral, which is much safer in today's society, certainly than half men, half women restrooms, especially if they're designed properly. So I'll be really anxious to see what designs you do come up with, the buildings that are much needed and approved. Unlike Renee, I feel that the project being done at the Oregon Pavilion is going to turn out to be a very unsafe facility. And I'm really sorry to see that some of the plans that he designed, which were actually quite attractive and extremely functional, were not approved. So thank you, Charlie, very much for all of your hard work, and congratulations on having an opportunity to put in new much needed facilities. And I'll be really, like I said, anxious to see the designs come along. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Cody, Howard, and Micah.
Hi. Well, I was going to ask, it was kind of addressed by the public comment just now, and apologies in advance. I had a bit of a minor head injury today, so I might have missed it. But I was trying to get some clarification on what happened with the Oregon Pavilion. It sounds like there was difficulty reaching an agreement for redesign.
I can go ahead and take that. We, Cody did bring this item before this committee probably 2 years ago. It received unanimous support for its design. However, given additional public comment and stakeholder input, we continue to have meetings with the community led by Renee Smith and Mary Monk to continue to evaluate proposals and try to go through some additional designs that might suit their needs. And this is the design that staff has rested on with support from the mayor's office, given the generous grant funding that we received from the state in order to move forward.
Thanks, Christina.
Christina. Micah? Oh, well, Howard and Micah. Sorry, Howard, you.
That's fine. I turned off my hand too fast. Thank you. Charlie, I'm just curious, forgive my ignorance. Are these restrooms using the Consultant's Guide to Park Design and Development standards for restrooms from the 2019 document?
Yes, that document, we're actually, yes, they will, to answer the quick question.
Okay.
But we are looking at refining them. We learn more every day. So if there's anything you've learned that you want to share during the workshops when these come to the committee, please, by all means, share your input. But we are going to be doing some updating to the Consultant's Guide just to kind of keep up with what we've learned over time.
May I ask, do you see as a professional a difference between Balboa Park bathrooms and then the rest of the bathrooms, the city's bathrooms in the park master plan that could be specialized for Balboa Park, that could stand out and use any sort of edit or appendix?
Not sure I'm grasping the entirety of that comment, but I think some of the basic needs that are identified in the Consultant's Guide are fairly universal.
Right.
When it comes to Balboa Park, and quite honestly, it also depends on the architecture of the park. You know, even within Balboa Park, you have different areas. You know, the West Mesa has a different feel than the Central Mesa and the historic core. Even the East Mesa, and if you read that precise plan, has a different architectural style prescribed for it. So I wouldn't even take the same restroom design from East Mesa and put it in the Central Mesa. Each design should be customized to some degree for the site itself.
Then would you, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say, then you get into the discussion of whether you prefab something or stick build something, meaning building it on site. Sometimes you can, and quite honestly, the prefabs do have some limitations. They can't get hold of all the materials that we can get hold of, so they can make something that looks, you know, just like other restrooms in the Central Mesa, or they can do something customized. They don't all have to be, you know, CMU block and sheet metal roofs. All of that kind of material that kind of helps define the character of the building can be customized to the restroom. But if it comes to the point where we need to stick build it on site, then, you know, that's what we would do.
Do you feel like there is a opportunity, or do you feel like it's covered that the different zones, the east, the west, and the Central Mesa, has the design standards in place for Balboa Park that would make it those areas in either the guide, the development, the Consultant's Guide to Park Design and Development, and the precise plan together? Or do you feel like there's a opportunity to be more explicit about what gets built in each of the zones?
I feel like the design guidelines that are in the Central Mesa Precise Plan and the East Mesa Precise Plan cover the general design themes. Then we have our overall direction to do gender neutral facilities. Then we have other design guidelines that are in the Consultant's Guide that are there for safety. So, and for maintainability. So we don't just take an off the shelf restroom from the public restroom company or any other company and say, here, let's put a little parsley around this and call it a day. We try not to do that. We try to get some character of the park incorporated into the building. And quite honestly, this is where comments from the Balboa Park Committee can help influence which way a restroom goes. But, you know, there's this little bit of a stigma with prefabricated restrooms. I think it's an undeserved stigma, because I think you can do a prefabricated restroom that looks to the untrained eye exactly like a stick-built on-site restroom. So, but again, these new restrooms are going to come to the committee for your feedback. They'll likely at least come as a workshop item to get the overall design, feel, and flavor and size and programming, you know, including input from staff as to what, you know, how much storage we may need, how many facilities we need. And we'd look to a design consultant to say, well, based on you've got, you know, 20 acres of sports fields here, we think you need X number of facilities. So we'll be looking to a consultant to make that kind of recommendation. We're not going to dictate a number that may be artificially high or low. So we'll be looking to the committee for some input. We'll be looking to the design consultants for their professional input. Does that answer all your questions?
I hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carly. Mike and Brer.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Molly. And hi, Charlie. Good to see you. And I think I speak on behalf of all my colleagues on the committee and thanking you and Christina and so many other staff members in finding a path forward with these particular projects and prioritizing them. I was just looking back at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know, those physiological needs are even slated as the foundation before you can even get to things as important as security needs, let alone you know, transcendent sort of opportunities, which we all hope people have in the park. So really pleased to see these restrooms making progress, and wanted to laud you folks in particular for the gender neutral approach you've taken. You know, I think that is fantastic in terms of really sending a message of welcome and belonging for many folks who often haven't felt that in the park, and has a variety of safety benefits, as was previously pointed out, and is also very consistent with the experience plan that the Balboa Park Cultural Partnership has been working on, and the values that are sort of running throughout that. So thank you very much for sort of turning that into a no-brainer of sorts. I wanted to just ask a question regarding, and maybe you can give a quick description of the process by which these particular high priority projects were prioritized and selected among several other sort of potentially competing. I always am just unsure of that process, and like to hear a little bit more about what that looks like on the ground. Obviously, these are critically important. I'm not suggesting otherwise, and very pleased that these are the ones that are moving forward. But when monies like these become available, what is the process that you folks engage in to say, these are the ones we're going to do, even though it means not doing these other ones?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Those decisions are above my pay grade. I am not typically involved in those decisions. Christina probably has, Ms. Chadwick probably has a better idea. She's more involved in those types of conversations than I. But sometimes it's as this committee has referred to it before, the low-hanging fruit. So say, for instance, the restroom at the village, at Spanish Village, that's low-hanging fruit. It's small, it's easy to do, it doesn't require any new construction. So that one we can take care of pretty quickly and easily. Then it can depend on where the need is. You know, if we want to fix what we've got first versus building something new and ignoring what needs work. So, but also there are, you know, I think we all know there are political voices in the park that may express their requests to the, powers that be. But that, again, that's above my pay grade. So I can't really tell you how things are prioritized. Sometimes the funding source moves one up above the other. If we can't use a particular funding source for restroom A, but we can for restroom B gets moved to the front. So there are a lot of, and sometimes it's a matter of, how much money something will cost versus what we have. If a $5 million project is a higher priority, but we only have 3 million and we have a $3 million project, well, let's get that one done rather than sitting around not doing anything on the other two. So, but that's pretty much made at the management level.
Thanks, Charlie. Brer?
Hi, Charlie. It's great to hear an update on this. I just had a couple quick comments. I think that approach at the Palisades of converting the existing building to a visitor center, building a new structure, sounds like exactly the right approach to me. So looking forward to seeing that. Then there was the Morley Field restroom. There's 3 out there that are all pretty worn. One of them is even the one down at the bottom of the hill.
Over by the velodrome, or are you referring to the one at?
Yeah, there's the one by the
Jacaranda?
velodrome, and then there's the one down at Jacaranda Drive, which I think the one at Jacaranda is actually boarded up at the moment. And then there's one next to the baseball field. Is the renovation that you're proposing, that's the one at the baseball field, right?
Correct, the one closest to the entrance to the baseball field complex.
Are there any plans?
It's fairly central.
Yeah,
sorry, go
I think I know the one you're talking about. Will that redevelopment or affect those 2 other restrooms at all? Or is there any plans to decommission or renovate those in the future?
I have not heard discussions about the one that is more to the southwest by the velodrome. I haven't heard anything on that. It is something we can certainly bring up with our director. I believe the one that is over by Jacaranda Street, kind of down in a hole, is a bit of a problem site, and that's why it's currently boarded up. I don't know if there's a final direction on what to do about that particular site there, but it's a continual problem from what I understand.
Okay. One other question. At Marston Point, there's a building that is out of commission that looks like it used to be a restroom. Where does that lie on the list of priorities for restrooms?
I think that's pretty low. That building has been shut up for years, and then somebody set fire to it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
I just don't think it's a very viable site, really. There's not a lot of users down in that area.
Okay, that's it. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. I will just kind of end the item with the accolades to you and the rest of the team and Renee and Mary for all of your work on this. It was 2019 where Chris and I, when he was still in the council office, worked on the budget allocations that provided the initial funding for these restrooms before the additional state funding was found. And at the time, the idea of any restroom improvements from the park, other than what had happened in the West Mesa, felt like it was never going to happen. And I know it's taken a long time, but it's just wonderful to finally see some improvements. And Micah got more philosophical than I will, but the restrooms are the place where every user comes and has an experience in the park that may, actually ruin their experience in the park. It is the number of constituent complaints that we all get in terms of going to the restrooms and seeing the condition of them impacts the user experience significantly. And so these improvements are huge. They're going to be long lasting. And I just really appreciate all of the city teams that have made this possible. And there's still a lot of work to do, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to celebrate kind of the improvements we've made. And Howard, I appreciate the questions you asked as well, because making sure that we're thinking about not only taking kind of the design criteria that obviously staff has to follow, but the parsley that Charlie is making sure is incorporated into any of the restroom designs, as he said, is helpful and important. So with that, thank you all. It looks like we do not have any other committee member comments. Charlie, thank you for your time this evening. We will move on to our action item. It looks like Randy is here. So Randy, I'm not sure if you're planning on introducing the item. Oh, we have an Alyssa Muno as well. And I know we have Phil and Claudia back to hang out with us too. So we have the whole team together to talk about mobility improvements for Balboa Park redesign. So I will ask staff. It looks like Randy is nodding that he wants to start. So Randy, I'll pass over. Thanks.
Thanks, Molly. Yeah, we've got the whole crew here. They're pulling up the presentation now. I just wanted to provide a few brief comments before we hand it over to the sustainability and mobility team. Just want to thank you as committee members for the great discussion. The last time we brought this item to the committee and all the input we received there, as well as the input we've received since then. We've got a lot of really good ideas that have come through, and I know our sustainability and mobility and transportation teams have been hard at work looking at a lot of those suggestions and analyzing what is possible. We're balancing a lot of different needs and users in a pretty limited right of way. And this is really a component of a larger slurry seal group job. So what we're talking about here is basic street maintenance and resurfacing. So somewhat limited in the scope of what we're able to do, but trying to take advantage of this opportunity as much as possible. There is a pretty strict timeline for moving that slurry group job forward. We don't want to delay that. So this will be kind of our last opportunity, I think, to check in with the committee. Very much look forward to your input tonight. And we will expeditiously take that back, make a final decision about what the actual striping will be, and communicate that back to this committee as quickly as we can. Again, just want to thank you all for the robust input that we've gotten, and look forward to the discussion today. And with that, I can hand it over to Alyssa.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Thank you, Chairperson Molly, sorry, and the entire committee. I was actually on the last meeting that we had, though I was ill, so I was just listening in. So I did hear all of the comments, and Phil and Claudia and Christy, our Deputy Director of Mobility, were taking notes, and really we walked away from that committee hearing to do a deeper dive into the segments of Balboa Drive. As you can see here in this exhibit, each segment has different characteristics, and we uncovered that through our parking review, as well as just looking at, we have Camp Cajito up in the north section. We have some other users that are dominant more in the southern section. We have ingress and egress with El Prado, which creates its own circulation, increases parking to the south of El Prado. So we really looked at it not just as one long roadway, but really what could we do? And while our recommendation is still the same as what we came with last time, and what we overviewed in October when we came to the committee, we did want to talk through some of the constraints, also some of the fire response needs that exist, and our opportunities to balance all those mobility opportunities moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Phil, who's going to walk us through the existing condition and some of those design ideas, and remind you of what the SUMO and transportation recommendation is. And then we'll all be on. Claudia's here again, Christy's here. We're all here to answer any questions and provide any additional information that's helpful to move us forward tonight in being able to take advantage of a slurry project and see some improvements on Balboa Drive. So with that, Phil, if you want to take over from here.
Great, thanks, Alyssa, and good evening, everyone. So I'm going to keep my my video off just to keep the PowerPoint stable here. So, so this slide shows the existing striping for the corridor, and we've shown this in the last couple of times we've been before you. This is from Upis to its terminus south of Juniper Street, what Alyssa showed on the previous slide. The corridor is made up of about 450 parking spaces, 2 southbound travel lanes. So this this picture here shows the southbound movement looking south. Parallel parking on both the east and west sides. Southbound cyclists currently ride with traffic but without markings. And it's a low speed and a low volume road. And the roadway is closed in the evenings, being a park road. So this slide shows the recommended alternative that was brought to you for consideration in October and again in January. Action on this alternative was tabled by the Balboa Park Committee in January for those that weren't at that meeting, but it still remains the staff recommended alternative since it provides for safety, access, and parking benefits. As you can see, it converts the existing 2 travel lanes down to 1 lane with the addition of reverse angle parking and maintains the parallel parking on the east side. This improvement provides enhanced visibility for cyclists with a reverse angle parking, as was shared last month. Since the January 5th meeting, so since your last meeting, we have met with the City of San Diego Fire Department, as Alyssa mentioned, to discuss their required access needs. And we have now included the mandatory 20-foot fire access requirements to all of the slides that you'll see here tonight, including this one. And this is that bar, if you can see my cursor, it's that bar on the bottom where those ticks are each sort of foot there of the 40-foot roadway bed. So based on these needs of the fire department, some of the alternatives were refined to ensure feasibility based on the variety of comments and requests made at previous meetings, as we distilled all of that down in this deep dive that Alyssa mentioned. Another thing we have added here, and you'll notice on the right side of the screen, is consideration of speed reductions from the currently posted speed of 25 miles an hour down to 15 miles an hour. So based on the feedback received last month from the committee, staff has developed an alternative configuration for the roadway. That's consistent with the labeling here. This alternative includes southbound and northbound bike facilities and could be applied to the upper and middle segments of Balboa Drive. The northbound contraflow bike lane is provided through the application of yellow striping and would still allow for parallel parking on the east side. It also meets the mandatory minimum fire access requirements of 20 feet. Speed limits also could be reduced to 15 miles per hour under this configuration. And contraflow bike lanes like this are most appropriate on low speed, low volume, one-way streets. Benefits include improved safety, comfort, increased efficiency, and safer speeds. The reason why this design would not be applied to the lower segment is that there is no entry point to begin the northbound bike facility mid-segment. Plus, the southern portion functions as a loop, a short loop. And being a loop provides northbound access without the need for bidirectional travel on this segment. So here is an image of what the contraflow bike lane alternative from the previous slide could look like. And this particular picture is from Santa Cruz, where it was applied on Pacific Avenue. So this is looking from an intersection where you can see this, the opportunity to begin a lane such as this, and it's shown in green. The vehicle traffic is contraflow, so it's coming toward the camera. And you can see parallel parking on both sides, also with the direction of vehicular traffic. So finally, we wanted to provide also a hybrid option that could replace the middle segment of Balboa Drive to address the request for more multi-use access and other feedback received last month. Again, this type of design could be applied only to the middle segment. This configuration includes flexible posts and preserves parking only on the west side through the conversion of angle parking, which could be designed either head in or reverse angle. In addition to the 15-mile-per-hour speed change, parking time limit restrictions could be added to increase parking turnover and to better align parking with park uses, potentially effectively nearly doubling parking capacity. This design would not be appropriate for the northern segment, given the need for pickup and drop off activities happening associated with a camp, and would not be feasible in the south, given the lack of ingress and egress opportunities to recreate such a configuration, since it is a closed loop with no intersections. So finally, this is our last slide. This is a comparison of the different options shared tonight. The first row is the current conditions showing the 2 travel lanes, 450 parking spaces, and the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. The recommended option, the second row, includes 1 travel lane, approximately 100 additional parking spaces, and Class 3 bike facility, along with a conversion to 15-mile-per-hour speed limits. The alternative option, the third row, shows the contraflow bike lane with no change to parking and includes bike facilities both directions throughout. This would also include a reduction to the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. The final hybrid option, the fourth row, shows what could be done for the middle segment of Balboa Drive with a multi-use path, minimal parking loss, Class 3 bike facilities, speed limit reductions, and time limit parking. So with that summary, I'd like to hand it back to Chair Chase and for your questions, comments, and feedback. And I'll go ahead and leave this up if that would be helpful for anyone.
Thanks so much, Bill and staff. I think we'll go, Johnny, to any members of the public that have comments.
First one is Renee Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm here as former member of the Parking and Circulation Study, chaired by Jack Carpenter and including Roger Sholey. Neither one of them could make this today. The one comment I do want to make relates to the 4-hour time limit parking. Thank you very much. That was a significant and strong recommendation of ours. And I would like to suggest that no matter which alternative is taken, that time limit parking be included in the middle and north segments. Thank you very much.
I have Peter Kaminsky next.
Yeah, Chase and committee members, my name is Peter Kaminsky and I represent 26 arts and culture organizations in Balboa Park. Balboa Park is a regional park, a park we all want to be well received by locals and visitors alike. But it's not just any park. The state designated Balboa Park Cultural District, one of only 14 in the state, is nestled within the bigger park and has unique guest experience needs, higher levels of maintenance, and important access considerations. Members of the Cultural Partnership support future transit opportunities that warmly invite tourists and also are locally accessible throughout the city. Currently, the vast majority of people visit the park with their family and drive a vehicle to do so. They stay over 4 hours on average and visit 2.7 cultural organizations. Several studies have shown the park is in fact underparked and proximate parking is seldom available on weekends, holidays, and much of the summer. We support and encourage the recommended alternative. At the previous meeting, a traffic study report utilised average data for the whole of the site. I walked Balboa Drive a number of times over the last month and seldom saw available spaces in reasonable walking distance of the bridge. During shows at the Old Globe and events at Museum of Us, parking was further limited. Further detail within the parking study revealed that unlike the low utilisation factor previously reported, the official survey was in excess of 75%, a dwell time of approximately 4 hours, and 1.8 to 2 turns per day for the spaces proximate to the bridge. That directly maps the profile of a visitor to the park. Such utilisation supports the preferred option and the addition of 100 spaces for that area. Please support that option. As an important aside, we would actually encourage the city not to place any limits on duration of parking at this point during the day, as our goal is to continually increase dwell time in the park and also provide options for paid and volunteer team member parking. Thank you very much.
Next, I have Laura Arujo.
Thank you, Chair Chase and committee.
I'm Laura Araujo. I'm a citizen of Mexico and I live in Tijuana, although I do consider myself trans-border. Living in Tijuana, San Diego, and of course, Balboa has been a part of my life growing up here for many, many years. And the experience ever since I was a young girl with touring classes here when I was in 6th grade, moving up to when I had kids and they were coming and we enjoyed the park. Parking has always been an issue. More recently, we've been going every year to events like Earth Day. And even more recently, we're volunteering at the Comic-Con Museum. In all these cases, parking has been a constraint, to say the least, if not in some instances, even a consideration to not visit the park, which is something that is very unfortunate. And just an example as to, I support there not being a time limit. Recently, we had at the Comic-Con Museum, our onboarding, which was a 2-hour event, but it coincided with the Chinese New Year's festivities in the houses, international houses. So we stayed over 5 hours and just enjoying the park. So I would really advocate for there be additional parking spaces to make this a more enjoyable visit, not just for us in Southern, in Tijuana, but also for those in District 1. I have many friends and family in San Isidro and Chula Vista that have the same situation, that either are, not visiting because they don't have a way of getting there due to transportation or because of parking limitations. And thank you.
Okay, Nivo Magnesi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Nivo Magnesi. I'm a resident of Hillcrest. I live within a few minutes walk of the park. I'm actually biking down Balboa Drive 2 to 3 times a week. I go to Centro Cultural for tango classes. I'm also, going to Central Mesa to the Japanese gardens. The Western Mesa, it isn't a regional park. It's actually a local park. There's playgrounds there. There's walking paths, trees for Elf Garden. There's the Marston House and Gardens, which many visitors don't even know exists. And it's actually our only green space in Hillcrest, like within walking distance. There's actually no other parks near us. So when we're talking about parks for residents, like Balboa Park is our local park. I really want to thank Sustainability Mobility for presenting these various options. I feel like there's some details that I feel, could go into, I feel like we're lacking some details, like, for example, the hybrid middle segment only. I kind of want to know, like, if we only did the middle segment, then what would happen to the upper segment or the lower segment? Like, to what extent can we pick and choose things? Could the committee recommend that things be picked and chosen, and then how would that transition to the other segments effectively? And I'm kind of curious about, to learn more about the constraints with the camp in the northern segment. I know that the dropping off and picking up was kind of why the hybrid, the bottom option, wasn't selected for the upper segment. And I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about that. But generally speaking, I think, bidirectional shared use path in this area would be great. I think contraflow would also be a great option. I've seen them in near DC. Actually, I was in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and this was a very common thing they had on the narrow residential streets, and it worked really, really well. But I think the shared use path would be the most accessible for people who want to bike around, don't want to bike on a sidewalk, but don't want to bike with a car behind them either. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing how the committee makes its recommendation.
Mike Singleton.
Yes, good evening. Mike Singleton. I'm a landscape architect, a planner, a certified transportation planner. Used to work with K2NA, but I retired a month ago. I'm a resident on Upa Street, just a few blocks away from the park. And so I'm a user in that area for about the last 30 some years. I noticed that there's not a buffered bike lane option shown that can work along with the fire department's requirement. And also, it probably won't fit, but typically the way this would be done would be two separated cycle tracks, one on the opposite side of parking in each case. So whenever you have a directional, a contraflow of bikes, it's always safer to have it on the other side of a parking spot. If you do push for the contraflow, hopefully you'll use the green paint to remind drivers that there is a lane there, and they may see cyclists coming from a direction that they're not used to. But I do believe in a park setting like this, that really a multi-purpose lane would be, a multi-purpose pathway would be the most likely one to fit in well with an actual park, being a recreation requirement, and the benefits of a recreational aspect for a multi-purpose trail, a two-way multi-purpose trail. So I guess just now getting involved in this, not seeing the full range of the alternatives. I'm sure there may be some reasons why, but typically the safest, in my opinion, would be a buffered bike lane, buffered on the side of, if it's angled parting, you could have a 3-foot chevron stripe with a 4-foot lane, and still have plenty enough room for the fire department to use. But I'm not seeing that particular one, which would be a logical one from my perspective, at least. Thank you.
Matt Stewart.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So I'm gonna start by reflecting something I heard earlier, that no plans or anything was sent out prior to this meeting. And it's really hard as just a member of the public, not fully understanding, all the engineering and all how this goes through, that, there's no option to digest this before we have to, make a comment. And so it's kind of clear that the city's just trying to push this through. We got 3 meetings on this now to take public comments, but not one thing has changed or been incorporated based on, the time that we have spent giving our feedback. And it's also clear that you're using the fire department as a smoke screen to say that, we can't have bike facilities because they need access. Well, the cars are the reason that fire trucks can't get through places. Bikes have no problem getting out of the way. So based on my limited comprehension of everything, I think hybrid would be the best out of these options. But I would think the lower alternative with the bike lane next to the curb could also work. But I do support time limits for some of the parking spots. I think that would show that parking is not as utilized as some people think. Thank you.
Okay, Christine.
Hello, committee. Thanks for letting me join. My name is Christine Martinez, and I'm a resident of District 6 Substance Scripts Ranch, and I'm a mother of 2 children, and we enjoy going to the park, but I will say that parking is definitely a deterrent. It can be very difficult to make commitment to go, maybe a 20-30 minute drive from our home to get to Balboa Park. And then when we do get there, we want to spend the day. We want to be able to park and, see some of the attractions, the museums, maybe catch a show, maybe catch dinner. And we don't want time constraints on that. It's very nice to be able to have accessible parking, especially when we have our gear with us and all the things that kids require us bring. And it's just really great for us to be able to go there and not have the worry of not being able to get in and out of our parking spot. And I would really ask the committee to strongly consider the recommended alternative, which includes more parking spots. I think that the park in general is just such a jewel for our city, and for us to have more parking, it just lets people from outside of the area come and visit. We're always talking about accessibility and wanting to be available to a diverse crowd from across the county. And in order to do that, we really do need to plan for these alternate parking spots so that people can come and feel confident that when they come, they're not going to be circling the lots for an hour. That would be my recommendation. I ask the committee to strongly consider that. Thank you.
Okay, Peter Raymond.
Yes, I've lived in the neighborhood for the last 40 years, and I would suggest that you leave it the way it is. I like the parking the way it is. For us in the neighborhood, I always tell all of my neighbors, please do not move your cars during December nights or St. Patrick's Day parades, or, you know, they have gay pride. I mean, because if the parking is not there, they're parking in our neighborhoods. And then they're taking the parking away for us that live in the neighborhood. So I strongly suggest that you leave it the way it is with the 450 parking spaces. And if you're gonna do back in, do not do back in, because then you got to slow down the traffic for people to back in. It should be front in, if anything. The neighborhood definitely needs parking. Now, I do serve on the parking committee, and we've opened up 300 parking spaces in the neighborhood. So if you do take away parking, it's always going in a negative for us in the neighborhood. And I would prefer that you just leave it the way it is.
Nicole Burgess.
Good evening, Balboa Park Committee. Thank you, Chase, Chair Chase, and members, as well as staff. Thank you, City of San Diego. Appreciate the alternatives. My name is Nicole Burgess. I sit on the City of San Diego Mobility Board, and I am an active commuter from District 2 and visit the park regularly and appreciate riding my bike there and having a safe place to ride. Balboa Drive was somewhere where I love to go and meet my friend and visit and just appreciate the outdoor space along that linear park. Going northbound is actually not feasible because it's one way and it's extremely dangerous. So I am calling in support of alternative that shows the counterflow, two ways, both directions for the for a bikeway. And I know there are some, you know, constraints, but there was some good comments by Mike about the, you know, having a two-way cycle track on one side, buffered multi-use path is the most ideal. So appreciate staff looking at a safe access for people in all modes, and that parking is not a sustainable approach to our future. So just addressing, I know parking is a big concern. However, we have to make sure that it's safe for all modes if we really want to transform and become a more walkable, bikeable place, especially in the most beautiful place, Balboa Park. Appreciate the time to give comments and look forward to seeing what the board proposes.
Connor Proctor.
Hi, I'm Connor Proctor. I'm a resident of Baker's Hill, and I would like to kind of voice my support for the hybrid option. That one looks the best. And then after that, I think the alternative plan looks the best. And then after that, the recommended plan looks best. And so looking at this, it seems like it would be possible to do the hybrid plan for the middle segment, the alternative plan for the upper segment, and then the recommended plan for the lower segment. And by combining these three options, it looks like we would be able to have a positive effect on parking by adding parking in the lower segments to offset the hybrid option in the middle segment. So it seems like we could combine all those together for a better option. I used to live farther away from the park, and now I live close to the park. And when there's just always parking in this area. With all due respect to Peter Kaminsky, I don't know what he's talking about. I can always find parking in this area. When I walk by, there's always parking. And as he said, most of Balboa Drive isn't proximate to the museums, and parking in this area isn't the solution to the museum's parking problems. There's 1 million parking spots on the east side of the park. If you go to Inspiration Point parking lot, there's always parking over there. And the solutions to the museum's parking problems are to make that parking more accessible with better shuttles or signs that point people to the open parking spots. It's not to put more parking on the west side of the park, on the opposite side of the park from the museums. This is our local park for Bankers Hill, and it should be more like a park. We should be prioritizing access for people. We should be prioritizing access for bikes. We should not be prioritizing storing cars in our park. And let's not forget, last time this committee met, we had dozens of callers call in asking for more bike facilities. I'm not sure we were as motivated to come out this time because we've been talking about this for so long, but let's not forget all those people that came out and talked before. Thank you.
Anar?
Hey everyone, my name's Anar. I live in Kensington and I prefer to take the 215 or my bike to get to the park. People don't realize, not in just this call, but in general, that parking spaces beget more parking spaces. I feel like some people on these calls would go to the ends of this earth to turn this entire city into one big, massive parking lot. We don't need more parking spaces, we need more parks. For the people that haven't been following this development from day one, the city itself pointed out that the parking utilization rate on Balboa Drive is a mere 30%. We will not be able to provide parking for every single person on this earth, and we will never have enough lanes for every single person on this earth. The only solution to the car problem is reducing the number of cars on the road, and adding more parking will not do that. Otherwise, I am excited that you are proposing new design options and are also proposing metered parking. I think we as a city should stop subsidizing parking. And we know from cities across the world that parking revenue could help with infrastructure enhancements, circulator operations within the park, and a myriad of other improvements that can be done both within and without the park. I'm a fan of the alternative and hybrid options, but would love more details on how these would interact across the entirety of the road. Thank you so much for your ongoing work, and I'm stoked for y'all to make the best option possible here.
Manny Rodriguez.
Hey everyone, my name is Manny. I would really ask the Sustainability and Mobility Department to really, when designing these projects, to envision their own kids riding these designs in their bikes, skateboards, or scooters. I have a little brother that I like to take around with me throughout downtown and also throughout the park. And I would like to just let him be out on his own and not always have to follow him around. But if the Sustainability and Mobility isn't designed for that, if they allow, sharrows instead of actually protected bike lanes, me and every other older brother and every mom out there is not going to feel comfortable letting their kids go to the park, which honestly should be their right to go to the park. It's a park. And so I would really, really, really strongly urge the Sustainability and Mobility Department to consider children using the park. And also, I do want to point out, like someone said earlier, that the last call, public comment was overwhelmingly, over 99% in support of adding protected bike lanes and stressing how this is a neighborhood park more than a parking lot for museums. And it just seems like Sustainability and Mobility Department did not care about that at all. So I would just ask the department to do better going forward. Thank you.
Advancement ICA San Diego.
Yes, hello, thank you. My name is Gayla Fernandez Florin, and I'm a resident of Bay Park, and I'm also an employee of ICA San Diego, which is on the Prado. I appreciate hearing everybody's opinions. From my perspective, I would like to put my vote in for the recommended option. In theory, I agree with what people are saying about reducing, allowing bikes to be more accessible and reducing cars, but the entire city of San Diego needs to support that. And from a museum perspective, I hear very, very often that people do not come to our spaces because they do not have time to look for parking lots. Myself, when I go to work, it is very common that I am late to meetings because I have nowhere to park and I have to turn around for almost close to 30 minutes sometimes. And this is a really big problem for my job. ICA is a merger between a space in Balboa Park and a space in Encinitas. And when we did that merger, we were hoping to create more unity throughout our county and to allow residents of different districts to finally explore all of San Diego. And the parking is the #1 reason why people don't come to the park. So thank you so much for everybody's opinions. And I look forward to seeing what comes of this. Thank you.
Josh Clark. Josh, you're still muted.
Talking of, hi, okay. Thank you for letting me know. I trust I'm not anymore. So I want to talk about the recommended option. Routinely ride my bike over the Cabrillo Bridge from Laurel into El Prado, and that is the existing condition for the bridge is a 15-mile-per-hour posted speed limit with a shared lane marking. And if anybody else has ridden across that segment, I think you will also feel that's a stressful experience as a person with a bike. And I strongly encourage us to have a lower traffic stress experience for people riding on Balboa Drive. I routinely ride on Balboa Drive later at night, especially during special events, even though the 4th and 5th Avenue bikeways are much enhanced and really great facilities. There's just so many variables. People driving late, especially on like a weekend at night. So I do find my way into Balboa Drive as a safer alternative to even those really great facilities. And so I would encourage to even make that an easier and safer choice in the evening when the gates are closed at the intersections, to incorporate bend outs at those intersections so that it's still accessible for people walking and biking. Choosing that safer alternative at night, it's well lit. And so if you're unfamiliar with bend outs, there's really good examples on 30th Street and the Meade Avenue Bikeway, and also Texas Street. So I think that would make for a really, like I said, a really comfortable and safe experience for people that want to choose to get uptown and downtown by bike. And additionally, I also find myself routinely going to the Marston House, to the 6th Street playground, and being very blessed to have never once had an issue with parking. It seems quite abundant in that section. And so what is not abundant is a safe bikeway on Balboa Drive, especially when two people find their way passing you in a meeting event, when you're just trying to occupy the lane. It's a hectic experience. So I do trust that you can see to incorporate the alternative or the hybrid, and I can't wait to use them. So thank you all.
Isaac.
Yes, hi, my name is Isaac. I'm a resident of Hillcrest. I wasn't going to join or call into much of this meeting, but I decided to anyway here in the last few minutes. And I guess I don't have any comments about the proposed options because they all suck. And I'm just sort of exasperated and exhausted with the city at this point. The mayor likes to talk about thinking big and innovating, and we might get that with one or two, marquee projects like Park Boulevard. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of things this city proposes is not thinking big, is not innovative, and doesn't work for most people. If there are people like the woman who called in from ICA who talks about her patrons not coming down because they don't find anywhere to park, then they should probably consider changing their exhibits to be things that people want to spend time going to. And if she wants to be on time to her meetings, she should leave earlier. the fact, there's plenty of parking and it's an excuse. And I'm tired of all of this. This just sucks. Everything about it sucks. The city doesn't care. Nobody listens. Advocates work their asses off to try to come up with fantastic ideas for bettering this city, and it just goes unheard. The city doesn't care. Why should we continue to participate if nobody's going to listen? The city does whatever they want anyway. This is all a farce, and I don't know. It's really frustrating. So if it feels personal to you, I hope so. Look in the mirror, figure it out.
Okay. Rachel Graham. Oh, sorry, Rachel. I think you're still on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I clicked the unmute button and did not actually unmute. Hi, my name is Rachel Graham. I am a resident of Carl Mountain Ranch up here in District 5, and I find trying to find parking spaces incredibly stressful. I won't bother going to places if I find, if I'm worried I won't be able to find a parking spot. And I've recently embraced our public transit system, and it's not perfect, and I'm working on that. But Balboa Park is pretty darn well served by the bus, at least from up here in District 5, and even better if you live closer to that area. So I take the 235 down, I take a transfer, and then I don't have to worry about parking. So we have an opportunity here to improve the safety for cyclists, and that needs to be our priority over adding or preserving parking spaces. Thank you.
Judd Curran.
Yes, hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Judd Curran and I am a resident of Golden Hill. And I regularly commute by bicycle around the city, including to work and also to enjoy the park nearby. And I'd like to state that the recommended option is really not a responsible option. I think we really need to consider safety of our pedestrians and bicyclists, especially those who are starting to make that shift away from single occupancy vehicles as the primary mode of transportation, which we know is not sustainable. The city has a climate action plan that is a binding plan that we've committed to move transportation away from the single occupancy vehicle as the primary mode. And we've been working really hard as a city, both the residents as well as city planners and politicians, to move in that direction. And so here we have an opportunity to further embrace that effort. And the recommended option doesn't do that. It still puts the car as the priority. And we have committed to moving beyond that. So there are plenty of reasons why making bicycle options more integrated as part of our road diet is smart. It actually alleviates parking congestion because more people feel safe going to the park without their car. So when we think about possibly choosing a design that has, say, +0 parking spaces, but that promotes more bicycle use, you actually gain availability in parking. We know this, studies have shown this, people have talked about this. So I encourage everyone to really think hard about the bigger picture. We're often losing sight of the bigger picture in pursuit of short-term goals. And when we think about climate change and the climate crisis we're in, we have to think about the bigger picture, and that's hard because we're not conditioned to do that. And so choosing an option that provides more alternative modes of transportation that are safer, that encourage more people to utilize them, is the right choice. And of the things that we have on the screen here, either the alternative or hybrid plan move us in that direction. Thank you.
Michael Meacham.
Hi, my name is Michael. I am a resident of
Bankers Hill. I live at 5th and Redwood, just a couple of blocks from the park. And I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate the work and effort of the committee and all the people that are here tonight. I do think this is a step, one of many important steps in getting the dialogue and people together. So I'm sorry that other people may not think that way, but I think that you deserve a lot of credit for the work that you're doing. I do have one concern about that though, and that is that it feels a little bit absent from the community at large by putting it on the same night as a very important uptown regular meeting that takes place at this time. That's also considering parking, a big parking project on Park Boulevard, and you know, similar things have occurred when we talk about the bike lanes on 4th and 5th. I love them. I think they're fantastic. I moved here because of that. I got rid of one car. I was able to do that because I moved into this neighborhood. But somebody a lot smarter than me once said, and I'm a recovering bureaucrat, I used to work for city. Somebody in that profession said that the best solutions are those that solve many problems and create no new ones. I think that people on both sides of, or all the sides of this issue have brought up a lot of important factors. I think the city has offered some interesting alternatives, and I hope they take everybody's comments into consideration. I can only tell you anecdotally, I walk more than I drive now, have ever walked. I ride my bike whenever I can, but I find that walking is great. When my guests come from other areas, they very often bring their bikes or come without the intention of doing anything but parking. And on those big event activities, that's something we have to keep in mind. This is a big event area and activity, and that not on a Monday through Friday basis, but on those big events basis, that's where we've got to accommodate people and find a way to give them access and still meet our climate goals. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you will reach out and coordinate with the other organizations in the immediate neighborhood that are your partners in trying to make Balboa Park the best it can be in the future. Thank you.
I have Peter Raymond, but you've already spoken, Peter. I'm gonna unmute you real quick. But let me get Peter back. Sorry.
Yes, I'd like to say that besides living in the neighborhood, I'm also an avid biker, and I do use the scooters, and I do use all the modality lanes. And there's something that maybe some of you are not even aware of. We're trying to put a MAD in our neighborhood, which is a maintenance assessment district, and they'd like to put in what's called the Paseo, which is going to run along 6th Avenue, which would accommodate for bicyclists and walkers and joggers and everybody of that nature. So I do believe, like Mike Meacham has said, that we do still need the parking in the neighborhood with all the big events that are happening in this park every weekend, and without taking away from the residents that live in the neighborhood. So I would please leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, Mike Singleton. I know you've already spoken to Mike, so I'm going to give you 15 seconds.
Yeah, thanks. Just looking at the hybrid version, it seems to me that you could do angled parking there, and you count if it was a one-way cycle track with bollards, collapsible bollards, that could count as the fire lane as well. So it seems like you could make something like that work in a one-directional cycle track at 4.5 feet wide with a 3.5 foot space. Again, that can count as your fire space, your fire access space as well.
Thank you. That's all I have for public comment.
Thanks so much, Johnny. We will go to committee member comment, and it looks like we are in the order of the hands raised. So beginning with Micah, Sarah, Makeda, Howard, Victoria, and Chris, Brer, and Allison. Going down the list in order. Micah?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Chair Chase. Thank you, everybody, for your comments tonight and for showing up to be part of the public process. I wanted to thank in particular city staff, Alyssa and Phil, and so many others who, again, I think this is the third time you've been here to talk about this issue, and have gathered input and listened and gone back to the drawing board and trying to figure out better and better solutions. Really appreciate that effort. I am very strongly in favor of the recommended alternative that city staff is proposing. I think that it tries to find a balance of interests among many in a very complicated context where we've got everybody from museums to visitors, staff, volunteers, bikers, pedestrians, all sorts of folks who are coming for different reasons and by different venues. I think that, the folks who are lucky enough to live within walking distance or biking distance of the park, who think of the park and use the park as a sort of neighborhood park, are extremely fortunate to be able to do just that. But that Balboa Park was truly designed to be a regional park that is of the county. And even beyond that, it is, we have significant amounts of people from outside the region. We have significant amounts of people from outside the country as well. And I think we really need to begin shifting the narrative to really focus on Balboa Park as a regional park, and to develop comprehensive long-term solutions that really help effectuate that sort of way of framing it. There have been a wide variety of initiatives that have removed parking from the park over the last several years. Those include the Plaza de Panama resurfacing, the Palisades resurfacing, and now Park Avenue. And, at times it can feel like death by 1,000 cuts along those lines. And I really appreciate the city's effort to sort of find a balance of sorts and to add some spaces at this time in this way. I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the city's recommended option as indicated on the slide before us, and move on.
And I will second that motion.
Oh, sorry, I missed who seconded it.
William.
William? Okay, we have a motion by Micah, second by William. Sarah, Makeda, and Howard.
I think Micah summarized well what I was feeling, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Sarah. Makeda?
When I got on the committee here, some of the recommendations were not in support of all communities' needs. And, I was kind of upset about that. Growing up in San Diego all my life, I knew that some of these communities could not get to the park. They couldn't ride to the park on a bike or whatever. And the park is regional. The park, we have tourists coming in, and I'm happy that there's people that live near the park and that can afford to live near the park, and they can ride and enjoy the park. But some people in San Ysidro, Chula Vista, Spring Valley, they're not going to ride a bike to the park, I should say. So I think we should consider those people. And like I said, as visitors, people that are from the county, and I'm really not in support of time parking. I've been, the marginalized people, paying, doing paid parking and time parking is not really feasible. And also, I think, employees and volunteers, time parking would not really work for them. In addition to large park-wide events. So I think again, that we're, be inclusive of all people that are in San Diego, and it's not just a small club around the park that could get to the park. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. Also, you should listen to Peter. I listened to the people that lived around the park, and they wanted it the way, they support their bike riders, and they wanted the park, the parking to remain the same. So I support the alternative parking so with 100 spaces. And I like it being the speed being lowered to 50 miles an hour. And that makes it more safe. But I'm just saying that we should think about other people, and by the way, a happy Black History Month to everybody. So think about other communities. So thank you. And I'm listening to Peter too. And I've seen what happened in the North Park community where, people are parking in the neighborhoods and the neighborhood can't even find parking. And this isn't fair to them. So thank you.
Thanks, Makeda. Howard?
Yes, thank you. Well, we had listened to Peter when the Plaza de Panama was losing 55 spaces. We would have thought that every museum would have gone under. And so the idea again and again and again and again and again, every item is about status quo parking is the only way to achieve maintenance of status quo for the cultural partnership. People don't understand that there are local people that access the park from 1 to 3 miles. And if they can access the park by comfortably walking or biking, that's more car parking available for people that live 3 to 15 miles. Because the 3 to 15 mile range, people bicycle, people take the bus, and people take their car. So the more people that take the car and as accessible by bus and by bicycling, as more cars for people that live beyond 15 miles and people that are coming down from Los Angeles or from Mexico. It's a regional park, it's international. We know that international people flying in should be taking transit to the park. So none of these are just car. It's not 1966 anymore. We're in a new era. And we've got to change the way our pattern is. And to say everything is wrong, and then to say, but don't change anything, is willful. Willful, not looking at the. I don't want to say it. I'll just say this. The AICP, American Certified Institute of Planners, has an ethics code that says planning process must continuously pursue and faithfully serve public interest. The public interest is multifaceted in Balboa Park because it is locals, it is regional, it is international. I haven't seen any intersection designs. How do these segments come into Laurel Street? How do these segments transition from upper, middle to north? I don't see an intersection design at all. Therefore, this seems to be incomplete. If my recommendation would be use the hybrid in the upper and middle section and then use the alternative or the recommended for the lower section, because the lower section is actually parking for downtown people going to work. That's what people are doing there. The upper section is Banker Hill people accessing the park from mostly Bankers Hill. The middle section is a mixed bag, mostly Bankers Hill as well, because we know the edges of the park, the east and the west mesa, are where the neighborhood parks are, and the central mesa where the cultural partnership has most of its facilities is an international in a different place. And we're treating these all the same as one parking lot fits all. So I'm not pleased without seeing intersection design to show us how these move through. And I would recommend, and I'll vote against this, what's put on the table, because I say that we should have the hybrid in the upper and middle, and we should have either the alternative or the recommended in the lower. But I'd like to see how they happen in these intersections, because the Laurel Street's a very big intersection for this area. So thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Victoria, Chris, Brer.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Molly. I want to speak in favor of the alternative because I understand that there are needs for parking. I've been to Balboa Park in my car and not been able to find parking, but to say that someone won't go because they can't find parking is disingenuous at best, because I mean, if there's no parking spaces, I mean, there actually are parking spaces. They're all full theoretically. So that means the park is very full and there are lots of people there. And what I've started doing, since sometimes it is difficult to find parking, is I live in Golden Hill and I've started walking the 1.5 miles. I do bike, but it's treacherous trying to ride your bicycle, especially on a Sharrow. And I invite all of you to ride your bicycle in a Sharrow lane. A lot of people don't even understand how they work. And so they think as a cyclist, you're in their way, when really the Sharrow says you share the road with a bicycle. And so when those bicyclists are in your way, when you're in a car, remember that that's what that's for. And it's pretty frightening. And the backing in parking is important because it at least slows people down and they're hopefully less likely to crash into people in a bike. And I wanted to reflect what a lot of pro cyclists have said, that it's really important to recognize that if you get more people using other forms of transportation than a car, it starts to open up spaces for people who do need them, who are coming from San Ysidro, who are coming from Los Angeles or Scripps Ranch or wherever they might be, who are in more need to have the cars, because you're not going to be riding your bicycle from San Ysidro. So thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Chris and Brer and Allison.
So one thing that I think is worth mentioning and reminding everybody is this is a slurry and stripe project, as Christina pointed out last time. It's really not as permanent as, I mean, obviously we have to take everything seriously, but we can change this later and we can make other improvements. So this is a simple thing that we can actually work around. My first, aside from that, so I look at the hybrid alternative, and to me, it suggests that maybe there is a need for a pedestrian walkway and wheelchair. And so if that is something that is needed, then I'm all in favor of that. And if it can only happen on the middle segment, I say we do it. I would combine the hybrid with the recommended. If I'm interpreting that right, there'd be a net gain of about 85 parking spaces. I think for now, as just a slurry and stripe project, the 15 miles an hour is the best alternative as well. I think that provides more safety for bicyclists. It's not perfect, but I think it's a safety factor that's been added. So the combination of a hybrid and recommended with the addition of 15-mile-per-hour parking works for me. I think that I'm not in favor of a 4-hour time limit parking, and to sort of self manage that or self limit that. I think this is maybe going out on outside of the bounds of what we've been talking about, but I think metered parking on the east side of the street would provide more turnover and And on the west side of the street, I did go back and edify myself regarding reverse angle parking. And although I may not be up to it myself, I see the merits of it. And so I would not suggest having metered parking on the west side, because one of the benefits is that people can open their trunks and they can haul out their stuff if they're camping and that sort of thing, and a meter would get in the way. So that would be sort of a hybrid as well in terms of metered and unmetered. And we should provide shuttles. We should increase the shuttle service and make sure that that's available to all of this area. And then finally, again, this is just a slurry project. And, you know, there's been a lot of focus on bicycling and safe biking and that sort of thing. And, you know, we have the real estate to put in proper separated bicycle paths that don't have to share Balboa. And we should look at that as as a critical project that we can add to this, rather than trying to make the slurry and stripe project everything for everybody. That should be something we should focus on. Like I say, we have the real estate. Let's figure out a way to do that. Let's look for grants. Let's add some parking now. And in the meantime, let's try to do something that's not just a stopgap. Let's find a way to get more parking and get safer bicycling.
Thanks, Chris. Frere?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking another look at this and coming back with some alternate designs. I appreciate that. It seems like some of these designs are getting a little closer, but I don't think these are there. You know, I feel like there are needs for the neighborhood and needs for the West Mesa. And I feel like the needs that are on display primarily in these options are the parking needs of the Central Mesa. And listening to the comments, it's pretty clear that this is the conflict that you're trying to negotiate. And, you know, again, I thank you for your efforts in trying to find a middle ground. But in my opinion, the reason you haven't gotten there is because it doesn't seem like you're ready to accept that, you know, the right solution may require not adding parking or perhaps even losing some parking. You know, when we think about these spaces and how we're going to design them, we should be approaching it, in my opinion, as a designer, with our values. And when you look at these, the values are not the values that should be represented in a park space where people exercise and relax and enjoy themselves. Perhaps this would be appropriate in a parking lot. I don't think it adds to the West Mesa. If anything, many of these designs detract from the aesthetic and human enjoyment of the West Mesa space. I don't think they reflect our climate values. I don't think they reflect our community needs. I just don't think they're getting there. The one that gets closest, in my opinion, is the one with the contraflow bike lane. Even though they are door zone bike lanes and they're unprotected, that is at least addressing an existing need the community has to move north and south and not interact with cars. What it doesn't do is serve the needs of younger riders or runners or walkers that might want to move through the park with their families. With any park design, in my opinion, especially in the West Mesa, as people have said, which is our community park, you have to always start from the point of saying, you know, who are your users? How old are they? Is this going to be appropriate for them? And the designs I'm looking at right now are not appropriate for them. Perhaps, you know, your answer to that question is, well, they can ride on the footpaths inside the park. when I was out on site, I saw people doing that. I also saw people riding contraflow in the lane with cars going the opposite direction. So I just don't feel that the Sharrow one way is appropriate. And I feel like the reasons for recommending it aren't valid, to be honest. So I guess the only way I can illustrate this is to say, look at parks around the country and in California and see what they're doing. What they're not doing is filling their parks with more cars. What they're doing is they're creating spaces for people. They're creating spaces for exercising and activity. And looking at the incoming development in Bankers Hill and Hillcrest, it's impossible to argue that these additional facilities and spaces aren't needed. People want this. I have a letter from Bankers Hill Community Group supporting a bi-directional cycleway, and I believe that there's space to make this happen. I would love to post this into the chat and provide it for the record, but in the meantime, I'll just read you a section from it here. We see Balboa Drive as an opportunity to enhance actual park uses while providing for safe circulation for vehicles, bikes, pedestrians, and also meeting the needs of the West Mesa. More specifically, we like the following features very much. A two-way dedicated lane on the east side of Balboa Drive from Upas to Juniper with a one-way loop south of Juniper. The track will not only enhance the park experience for visitors, but will also serve as a lane for emergency vehicles, free and clear of interference from cars. Bikeway connections along potential side streets, Upas, Quince, and Laurel into 6th Avenue and the Uptown bikeways. New potential parking added along Quince and Juniper within the West Mesa. Pickup and drop-off zones on Laurel would decrease the need for parking and accommodating those visitors who wish to walk across the Cabrillo Bridge to the Old Globe Theater and beyond. And perhaps a roundabout at Sefton Plaza, which would allow the West Mesa and the rest of Balboa Park, encouraging car-free users to use the tram, thereby reducing parking demand. So I guess my point here is that if the goal is to increase parking, that this is the wrong way to do it, because the goal in the West Mesa, in my opinion, should be to improve the experience for the people who access the park along the West Mesa and who live near it. That doesn't exclude people from other communities in any way. And I find it slightly uncomfortable hearing people say that because we live along the park, our needs shouldn't be considered, or that our safety should be compromised in the interest of parking for others, whether they're working downtown or working in the neighborhood. So being that I don't find any of these to be really satisfactory, I mean, I would have to vote against them. The only one that gets there, as I said, is the one with the contraflow bike lane. And even that is substandard in my opinion.
Thanks, Burr. Allison?
Yeah, mine's really short. Thank you, city staff, for all of your assistance on this. I think Chris hit the nail on the head. This is all, we do have the land, we do have the space, we do have the ability to make this something great, just as Brer mentioned. This can be something that's temporary right now, and I do and will recommend the recommended option, because I do think in this period of time and our transition between parking and biking, as we evolve as a city, as we are moving towards our climate goals, I think that this is a temporary potential solution where we can grow into evolving this and making it more what we want it to be. But right now, I agree with the recommended option. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. And with that, I would ask Victor to call. We have a motion and a second. Oh, Brer?
You know, I just hearing that last comment, I just have one more comment. You know, I don't think this is going to change, you guys. If you go down the road of creating more parking along Balboa Drive, it's going to be 20 years or more. So I mean, I'd like to offer an alternative motion to not approve this.
We have a
project.
motion and a second on the floor, so I'll ask Victor to call the roll and take the vote, and then we'll see how that goes. Victor?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
We have a motion and a second, so.
That's right, but Robert's rules alternative motion should be heard first, I'm afraid.
I honestly am not remembering my Robert's rules, Christina or Howard. I've always, anyone from city staff, I've always had that the motion with the second on the floor needs to be voted on. Randy
Well,
or Steve?
If there's no second on my motion, then you can go forward.
Okay, Victor, can you call the roll, please?
Molly Chase,
Yes.
Howard Blackson,
No.
Allison Soares,
Yes.
Briar Marsh,
No.
Victoria Curran,
No.
William Aaron Jr.,
Yes.
Micah Parson,
Yes.
Makeda Cheatham,
Yes.
Sarah Daw,
Yes.
Chris Eddy.
No.
Six. 6-4. In favor.
So that passes. And with that, we will adjourn. I'm forgetting when our next meeting is. I think it's March 4th.
Excuse me, Molly.
Yeah.
Do we actually have a quorum tonight? I don't recall anyone calling it.
Johnny, I think that we don't usually start without a quorum, but Johnny, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
He called it at the beginning of the meeting.
Do we now? Do we have a quorum now?
I don't believe we've had anyone leave that registered that they were here in the beginning of the meeting, unless I'm missing someone.
So 10 is sufficient.
Yes.
John, can I get you to weigh in? Do we have a quorum?
Well, I understand it doesn't matter about the quorum now, only matter at the quorum. at
Oh,
the
sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we have a quorum. We've
Thanks.
had a quorum the whole time.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't know I was on mute.
That's good. All right, so that passes 6-4, and we will adjourn. The next meeting, as we mentioned, it is in person. So the next meeting is Thursday, March 2nd.
Where?
Is it
Balboa
still going to
Park Club?
Balboa Park Club?
Yes, it'll be held at the Balboa Park Club and everyone will get notices in advance, as well as it will be in the stakeholder update that I send by email so that everyone has the details on where to find us. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Okay, Chris Eddy has his hand raised.
Oh, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to understand, so did we, by vote, did we confirm the reverse angle parking? That wasn't, because it was presented that it could go either way. But as pictured, that was the reverse angle. Is that what was agreed to?
I believe that was in the motion that Micah made, was the recommendation that was shown on the screen that Phil had up with the reverse angle parking. I think we lost. We have staff still on. We do still have Phil on, it looks like. Phil, Christie, or Everett. That was the recommendation from city staff.
Sorry, I was having a hard time getting my audio off. Yes, that was the recommendation based on the safety and access concerns that were brought up. That was a way to mitigate a bit there. So yes, a reverse angle parking in the recommendation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Phil.